Anakin, I told you it would come to this. I was right. The Jedi are taking over!
Classy Pete in the house!
All right, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your locations. This is Mr. Patriarch, official Orthodox winner, family man, and cool guy, joined by my friend Matt Erickson at Real King Pilled, whose details you can see thirdpositionnutrition.com. Very happy to have him joining us today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It is actually about, right now it is 8:15 local time here in Texas. 4 hours ago, it was 84 degrees and muggy as hell. And I just walked my dog and it is 49 degrees with a nice dry wind. So I am on top of the world.
That's pretty great. Yeah. 84 to 49 in a day. That's a big swing.
In 4 hours. Yeah.
In 4 hours. Yeah. Because right now it's my weather crystal ball is telling me that it is 40 degrees outside right now in Alaska. So that is it's less of a difference between Texas and Alaska this time of the year than one might think. So
right. Yeah. It's for the rest of the year it's very different, but this time of year it's similar.
Yeah. Very nice. But yes, it is cooling down. We do have nights in the 20s. A little further north, it'll get down to maybe the teens in the mornings. But yeah, it's that time of the year, and we're expecting our first kind of official snowfall where I live, outside of the mountains, next weekend. So getting ready for that Christmas magic.
Yeah.
But before we begin, I see we have 4 hyper chads in the audience right now. That's great. They're trickling in. This is the first live stream that I've done in a while. As you guys in the audience may or may not know, I've kind of been sort of on hiatus. So my family has returned from South Africa as of about 2 months ago. And kind of in that time, I've just been enjoying the company, enjoying, being the family man and hang out with my wife and boys. And that's what I spent today doing. But it felt like now was the time to sort of dip my toes back into YouTube and start having some conversations with some people who I enjoy, whose content I enjoy, and who as individuals that I respect. So if you guys are new to this channel and if you want to support, links to do so can be found below. To subscribe star, to the PayPal, you know where to find it. So let us begin. Matt, since you came on my radar, I guess, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, I sort of followed your trajectory, read the Matt Erickson deep lore, and I thought, wow, this guy is basically, the meme goes literally me. And it was, it really was kind of that way because I sort of learned after the fact that I used to be a listener of and appreciator of much libertarian and anarcho-capitalist material. Big fan of Tom Woods, big fan of the Mises Institute, and Jason Stapleton. And I listened to the Jason Stapleton podcast. And then, as I understood it, when he rebranded to Wealth, Power, and Influence some years ago, before rebranding again, as I understand it, you were sort of there for that transition. And then after that, you kind of went and cut your own path, and that's sort of where you are now. So I guess sort of before we get to sort of where you are now, give the people a little bit of your origin story.
All right. So I was born in Reno, Nevada. No, just kidding. I grew up pretty devout Seventh-day Adventist Christian and living in the Seattle area for the early part of my life. I went to a boarding academy in British Columbia for high school. It was a work-study program on a farm that was, at the time, the largest producer of organic carrots in BC. So, excuse me. I kind of grew up partly on a farm and living out in the boonies in BC. and graduated high school really gung ho. Wanted to, I think at the time, I wanted to be like a youth pastor or something like that, and wound up joining a program that was put on associated with my high school called Witness for Life, where I traveled around the world, went to several different post-secondary education places. One was like a massage school in California. One was a evangelism school in Detroit, which is kind of funny to say now. And we were on the north side. We were on the rich side of Detroit. And one of them was an agriculture school for agriculture in Norway. So I spent a little while in Europe, was there for total about 4 months between Europe, and then went and spent a couple weeks in Turkey and traveled around and just kind of got out and stretched my wings a little bit and really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed seeing different cultures and experiencing the when you're walking around in Europe or Turkey, I guess is technically Europe. When you're walking around in these areas, you can feel the history. You can feel that these are ancient lands, and it was fascinating to me. So I wound up kind of wasted away my 20s. Went to college, spent several years there, switched my degree up a whole bunch of times, wound up pursuing an accounting degree and ended up having to drop out because I ran out of money, accumulated a bunch of debt with no degree to show for it, many such cases. And then I was just sort of kind of trying to find my way. And I had a really long commute for a while, I was selling Subarus. I had a really long commute in the Seattle area and started listening to podcasts. That's where I started listening to Tom Woods, started listening to Dave Smith. I'm part of the problem. Eventually listened to the Jason Stapleton program. I just searched for libertarian podcasts. This would have been probably 2014, maybe. Just search libertarian podcasts.
Sounds about right. Yep.
This is times of ancient history.
Yeah.
Just really was hooked. I just went balls deep, so to speak, in the anarcho-capitalist worldview, and I was a loyal crusader online, advocating for ending the state and ending the Fed and all this sort of stuff, and wound up moving to Southern California and becoming Jason's co-host on Wealth, Power, and Influence for a couple of years. And through the COVID period and everything, I was on there. Had a bunch of people constantly telling me, "Hey, we love hearing your thoughts on the show. You should start your own podcast." And eventually I got around to it, and it happened to be right around the time that I was beginning to abandon the anarcho-capitalist worldview and started reading Mitch's Moldbug. And then 2020 happened with COVID and with the election and everything that went down associated with that. And it was pretty radicalizing. But in the course of all of this, I'd stumbled across I guess all this stuff revolves around podcasts. I stumbled across an Orthodox podcast that had just started called Lord of Spirits. And listening to Lord of Spirits essentially is what converted me to Orthodoxy. So I was doing this podcast with like this kind of radical right wing, I guess it's not that radical, but to most people it is. Emphasis on monarchy and talking about politics and all this stuff, and everything kind of turned toward religion. I started realizing that politics and religion are kind of, you can't talk about one without talking about the other. The two of them presume each other and mutually reinforce each other. And so that's basically what led me to this point. Converted to Orthodoxy, moved to Texas with my family after my son was born, and I've been working over here now been here for almost 2 years. And that's essentially the long and short of it.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I'm just going through the list. I'm like, yes. Same thing, same time. You even moved to Texas like the same time I moved back to Alaska, just about almost 2 years ago. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. But yes, no, that's kind of where I am too. And sort of kind of my trajectory as well. I had a different upbringing. I was kind of the part of the, I guess, generational cohort that helped normalize homeschooling. So that was me. Also, so I guess you could say in that sense, an unorthodox educational background as a youth. However, I did not. I was always basically through, I guess, sort of my college years, more or less, just kind of a normie conservative. I was a big Thomas Sowell appreciator when I was in high school and in college, and then gradually, as more time went on, and I thought about joining the. I was actually going to join the Navy as an officer, and then during the recruitment process for officers, it takes a lot longer than enlisted guys. And then basically during that time, like I was radicalized by Stefan Molyneux and and then so by the time they gave me the contract, like, sorry, it took a long time. Here, you want to go in as an E4 or something? And I'm like, not anymore. Actually, no, I don't. But yeah, and basically for a long time, I basically had what you might call American evangelical religious outlook on life, on the world, and my theology. I recognize now it didn't seem that way at the time, but really began to be influenced and shoehorned into sort of my libertarian presuppositions. So I was, thinking about how like the non-aggressional principle, and then like trying to apply it to God. I'm like, but we're his property because he created us. And then so he has property rights upon humanity. So he could do with it whatever he wants. Just like crazy stuff like that. And I'm like, what am I, which now sounds like ridiculous, but that's, ideology, one hell of a drug. And it doesn't really seem, I guess, foolhardy sort of at the time, but because there is, and I think this is true of every kind of ideology, is there is a certain degree of internal coherence with any ideology, provided you buy into the presuppositions. And the presuppositions can be bullshit, but if you're able to get past those, if you buy the presuppositions, like whether it's labor theory of value, then all of a sudden, if you buy into that, like Marxism makes sense. Or if you buy into, the non-aggression principle as like a presupposition, then libertarianism makes sense. And so on and so forth. And with all these other different ideologies, but it's been kind of a winding road, a journey to sort of get through that, and kind of being not like an atheist or agnostic, but just kind of in a spiritual no man's land for a bit of a time, and then finally finding orthodoxy. So, any comments on that?
a couple random ones, and then a deeper thought. So, first one is I forgot to mention this. I was also homeschooled until I went to high school, and I also tried to join the Navy. And this is actually kind of an interesting story.
Literally me. Oh my gosh.
I'll get into this one a little deeper. So I went to join the military. I went to enlist, and when I went, I was first filling out my enlistment paperwork. They have the one form, I can't remember what it's called now, but the one where you have to list like every possible medical condition or anything you've ever had at any point in your life. Mm-hmm. And so I'm filling that out.
And I was like, familiar.
I was like, well, when I was a kid, I had asthma. I haven't in quite a while now. It hasn't really bothered me, but it was just affiliated with my allergies and that sort of thing. And I said, should I put that down? And they said, oh no, don't worry about anything that's not like currently a problem for you. Don't mention it. Just they're only looking for stuff that's currently a problem. I was like, all right. So said I had no asthma, and went on. And so then so I go to MEPS. And I'm there going through everything. And I remember this. I'm doing the thing where they have you strip down your underwear and like frog crawl across the floor. And I'm in the middle of doing that. And a couple of MPs walk in the room and they yelled my name. And I'm like, oh, shit. Yeah. And so they're like, come with us. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was like, am I special? And so they take me to the CO there. And he's sitting there at his desk and he's looking at some papers and he goes, Erickson, why are you lying on your enlistment papers? And I was like, what? And so just before that, they'd done the whole thing, gave us the whole presentation and everything, and they talked to us, told us like stories. They had us fill out the same form, and told us a story about a guy that like lied about having asthma, and then he was at basic training and he had an asthma attack and almost died, and so then he got prosecuted for fraudulent enlistment, and they tell us like all these horror stories, and they're like, now when you write this, when you fill out the form again here, this like from the moment you exited your mother, anything that has ever happened to you. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense to me. Like before they want to know if anything's currently the problem, and now they want to know if anything's ever the problem. So it just made sense to me. So I just filled it out honestly. Well, I learned why my recruiter had been telling me anything, like don't give them any new information. Tell them exactly the same thing that you told us. Don't change anything at all. Just give them the exact same information. I learned the hard way that well, in hindsight, I'm happy it happened the way it did. But if I wanted to join the Navy, I should have just left the information the same, because he sent me into another room. I had to sit down. There's a big empty room with just a table in the middle of it. I had 2 MPs standing over my shoulders, and I had to write down literally every single thing that the whole situation, describe it from my perspective, had to like draw big X's through all the blank spaces. And these MPs are standing there over my shoulder. And I heard him as I was walking out of the room. I heard him on his phone. He picked his phone up and he said something to someone. He goes, "We got a potential case of what was the recruiter impropriety?" is what he said. "We got a potential case of recruiter impropriety." And I'm like, "Oh shit, I have really stepped in it now." So they called me after I sat there by myself for a while, and then they called me back in and said, "All right, you're not eligible. You're being medically disqualified." And it's based on your story, it sounds like you were bamboozled by your recruiter. So she's the one who's going to get in trouble, and you're not. She'll be here in about an hour to pick you up and take you home. I was like, "Oh, great. I can't wait for this car ride."
Like, shit, can I just take a cab? Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was like an hour and a half drive home, and I'm just sitting there like, this is awkward.
Yeah.
She was cool about it, but I think she got in trouble.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I reckon so. Yes. No, I had a similar, not exactly. So yeah, I think it was also sort of, I don't believe I had gone to MEPS then. This was a while ago. I can't remember, but it was a similar sort of thing. Like, all right, you got to tell us everything that had ever happened. And I think I mentioned that I had, what was it? I think it was my hand that I damaged it in or no, it was something else. I think I was like I had pneumonia in high school or something. It was really something stupid. But then they're like, oh, and then they're like, okay, so you're just gonna have to like get another physical or something, and like some other thing, which caused another delay, which let me be radicalized to find all I knew even more, and then it all ended up working out. But then, yeah, like I said, they call me and they're like, no, thank you. But anyways, so yeah, that is funny. But you said a couple of observations and then something deeper. What was?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the deeper thought was, you're talking about you kind of had this period of sort of, you had this deep American evangelicalism, and then you started realizing you're kind of trying to shoehorn your theology and your politics together, and
Yeah.
kind of making this jumbled mess. And I went through a lot of the same thing. I did this whole like trying to reason through, well, are we, God is our property owner, are we his property, and all this. And then it was like, eventually it was just like, this is so retarded. Why am I sitting here trying to think about my relationship to God in terms of property rights? Like, this doesn't make any sense at all. This is retarded.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting is I think that going through that, you can tell me if you had the same experience. I think going through that is what really highlighted to me that you can't take politics and religion and treat them as these discrete things that are like unrelated to one another. Because once I started thinking along these lines, I realized as I was reading like John Locke or something, or Descartes, before I'd seen these guys as, philosophers, political scientists, that sort of thing. But I started reading them in a different way. I started realizing that I'm reading theologians.
Yeah. You're
These
reading
guys,
religious texts.
yes,
The
yes,
epistles of Sir John Locke. Yeah.
yeah, right. These are the foundational religious texts for a burgeoning religious movement. They're the whole reasoning through of developing the principles of property rights and the all the different nuances and stuff of liberalism, which then leads to all the different downstream things that come from that. These are all explorations of religious axioms, and you can't get away from that. Ultimately, whatever your preferred government structure or governance organization is going to have religious presuppositions. It will necessarily have to have religious presuppositions. And if you have any kind of organized religious body, it's going to necessarily have some kind of, I don't want to say enforcement mechanism, but it's going to have some kind of a governing mechanism associated with it. These are two, you just can't remove these things from a human society. They're necessarily always going to be there together. They each presume the other. So it was like politics and religion. I kind of realized that I've been trying to think of these as discrete things where I could have my ponderings about religion, and then when I was tired of doing that, I could put it down and come over and do my ponderings about politics. But no, it's the same thing.
Definitely. And not only does that apply to politics, but also once you sort of have the realization that you're talking about, you realize that also ethics and ethicists, if you want to call that, what is that, like Stefan Malio's universally preferable behavior, or Kantian ethics, or objectivism. All of these are exactly the same thing, just applied to the ethical sphere rather than to the dynamics of power and what should and should not be as regards who's in charge and calling the shots and whatever. Because ultimately they all end up at a certain point, all of these things eventually become circular, and then it's just, okay, so can this position justify itself based upon this underlying thing that it all sort of cycles back to, and then it's just accepted as a given, and then divorced from any sort of theological worldview, the question inevitably comes up, and people will be like, "Are you being pedantic, or like you're just being an asshole?" But it always ends up coming back to, okay, so this is your foundational axiom. Okay, why? Like, why should I believe that? Like, what if I don't buy into that? And he's like, well, see, if you buy into this, then this whole thing makes sense, and with whatever you're talking about. I'm like, but what if I just don't care? Or what if it's garbage? What if there's a religious presupposition? What if it's I have your system, and now what if I pair it and make this weird chimera thing? Like, there's just so many, all these. Eventually, it's not just. This is, again, my own belief, and I am not an expert or anything, but it would seem to me that any sort of narrative or system of ethics or politics which is divorced from the spiritual just ends up in a fundamental way just kind of being as even more ephemeral and less justifiable than any religious faith, pretty much.
Yeah, that's the great irony, is that materialism is actually like a, would you say, like an overt overemphasis on materialism actually leads you to this weird ethereal neo-Gnosticism, kind of, because you by ignoring the spiritual, you presume things about the spiritual. So you're necessarily, all of these different axioms that all these systems are grounded in, like an axiom necessarily has to, there has to be some point of self-reference within the system. each of the, like, an axiom is going to be arbitrary. And ultimately, within that system, you're going to get this problem of self-reference, or of circular, what appears to be circular or begging the question. And because of the nature of axioms, this is something that was really, it's been so long since I've really thought about this and reasoned through it all, or listened to it be reasoned through. But Gödel's incompleteness theorems were, when I first learned about this was before I even started, I had never even heard of orthodoxy at this point. But that was, I think it was reading about just a normal scientific breakdown of Gödel's incompleteness theorems was what really reinforced to me that that I couldn't abandon Christianity. That it was the scientific materialist worldview was just a complete non-starter. And I'm not going to be able to do it justice in terms of the math of it or anything like that. But essentially, what Gödel did is he used set theory he was challenging the logical positivists of the time, who basically were saying that everything, that all of reality could be contained in math statements, that you could logically prove everything about reality. And what he did is he took math to prove that math cannot stand alone. That math ultimately
use math to show that math cannot justify itself. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So every system is necessarily going to refer back to another system. So eventually, and this is where it came out to the thing about self-reference, that ultimately, I guess a simple way to think about this is that the only way you can explain a language is with another language. And then you're going to need another language to explain that language, and another language to explain that language. And this is, you get into an infinite regress. So it was crazy to me when I learned this, because his incompleteness theorems, he published them like 100 years ago. And it's like, to anybody who knows, it's like recognized as the ultimate destruction of logical positivism, which is kind of what's presumed by the modern scientific materialist paradigm. The idea that essentially we can just math or science our way to anything. And one of the greatest minds of the 20th century used the system of logical positivism to disprove logical positivism. And yet here, 100 years later, it hasn't fallen aside. It hasn't, like, nobody knows that this system that they're using has been proven faulty. And I was realizing this at the same time that I was watching everything go down in 2020 with COVID. And I was like, this is the exact same thing. The exact same thing's happening. Human beings are completely irrational. This is what really drove home to me the ideas of, like, elite theory, that ultimately, like, you're never going to be able to get these ideas into the popular consciousness. Like, you're never going to, I can say Gödel's incompleteness theorems, and even in, like, a nerdy autistic audience, that, like, my type of audience, probably, like, I don't know, 70% of people, maybe they're going to kind of tune out a little bit. It just, you're not going to get these ideas into the popular consciousness. So the idea that logical positivism, nobody gives a shit about logical positivism being disproved by logical positivism. Everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
They just want to go back to grilling.
That's why, and which is also why, the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world still exist, is because, yeah, I mean, it goes back to that old saying, from Solomon, there is nothing new under the sun, and yet you could add an addendum onto that, and yet we pretend like there is, or we don't even know that it happened. Like, everyone's just totally. And this was, I think, sort of the real benefit of sort of plumbing the depths of, I guess, kind of a. How would you say it? Sort of the plumbing the depths of, like, right-wing esoterica before a time period, is you actually do realize that, and this is also true of Orthodox Christianity. So plumbing the depths of right-wing esoterica, your Machiavellis or your James Burnhams or even your Julius Evolas, you realize that a lot of these, what seem like novel ideas today on how to address sort of the situations of our current age, a lot of these ideas are actually very old, and a lot of people had already thought about them, a century or even more ago, centuries ago in some cases. Like, I mean, you can't read like who's that? Like Thomas Paine might not hold up particularly well in this day and age, but somebody like who was a nigh contemporary of him, Joseph de Maistre. I mean, you read de Maistre today, and you're like, oh yeah, no, this is money. This is the stuff. This guy is tapping into some profound realities about human nature, human experience, and also the spiritual dimension of man, the irrationality of man's desire to for greatness and sort of dynamics of power. And his ideas at the time was just basically a distillation of sort of older ideas, and he wasn't like necessarily coming up with anything new. And I guess that's kind of the bringing it back to orthodoxy. That was kind of the other thing too, when I realized like I actually don't have to, each new generation does not have to reinvent the wheel of Christianity with every successive generation. You don't have to be Billy Graham, and then you go on to your John Hagee, and then you go on to Hillsong or whatever. So you have these continually new and increasingly strange like iterations of Christianity, and a lot of the objections of atheists and whatnot. So the realities of God, the objections of atheists, you realize that a lot of this stuff, most of it, pretty much all of it, has already been addressed, centuries ago. So like if you want to know what Christianity traditionally is, and you're Bob the evangelical, and you're like, well, I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm going to read this and that, and I'm going to pray that the Holy Spirit will show me the way. And you can also just read, St. John of Damascus, and then he'll literally tell you what Christianity is. And he wasn't even making it up. He's just like, yeah, so it's the 700s or 7th century, and it's all right here. And he just lays it out. It's very clean. It's very neat. And he's not inventing anything new. Likewise with these right-wing esoterica people, they're not inventing anything new. But it's not theological, it's related to power, although they recognize the need for the theological. And then bringing it all back together. The problem with the modern age, of course, is everybody forgets this. And then so it's just continual generations of, if you want a vision of the future, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson telling you about science, for all eternity. That's basically it. It's we forget is the problem.
That sounds like hell.
Yeah. it's not that we're not learning anything new. It's that we're forgetting the things that we did know. I guess it's kind of what it boils down to, is which is why, and Kurt Gödel with his incompleteness theorem, and the way I know about that is controversial figure, but Jay Dyer's talks about him quite a bit in some of his stuff, which is how he got on my radar. But yeah, that's how you could have these situations of modernity where somebody as influential as Kurt Gödel can make these amazing logical mathematical discoveries, but then kind of get sidelined. It's like, we don't like it, or you have some guy come in with some like minor objection, and then it's just kind of forgotten. And then, like I said, it's eternal Neil deGrasse Tyson's after that. So that's the predicament we find ourselves in. But anyways, I guess kind of moving on to sort of where we're at today. I almost quoted Conan. I was going to say, what is good in this life? But yeah, actually, let's go with that. Let us quote Conan. What is good in this life, and how are you trying to live it in this day? So you're in Southern California, and then what happens?
So I'm in Southern California, the height of COVID. I found out that my wife was pregnant in February of 2020. And of course, the beginning of March 2020 is when the shit hit the fan. And we knew pretty quickly that we wanted to get out of Southern California. Watching how everything went down there, we were like, okay, yeah, this is all accelerating a lot faster than we expected. We'd expected, we'd stay in Southern California for 5 to 10 years. And then as things got worse, we would hightail it, and things got worse real fast. So
isn't that crazy to think? Like, allow me to interject
yeah.
real quick. It's just so odd that the beginning of 2020 feels like another epoch in like a real way. And I guess in a certain sense it kind of is, but in terms of time, it was like not that long ago.
Right. Yeah. There was as much time passed between, as much time passed between Trump's election or more time passed between Trump's election and 2020 than did between 2020 and now, which is bizarre to think about. It seems like it was like Trump being elected seems like it just a whole nother lifetime ago.
Yeah. And pre-Trump, the pre-Trump era feels like, the Stone Ages. Like it's, it's like
sometimes
the sleepy before times,
Sometimes I'll listen to some music or watch a TV show or something like that from like when I was in college, like 2008 to 2013 ish. And it's just like, oh man, we didn't know how good we had life back then. Like it was just so much less just constant, like there wasn't so much constant doom and strife and conflict and all that. It was just such a simpler time. Anyways,
I wish I bought a house back then. I'll tell
you. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I wish I was doing something other than accumulating the wrong kind of debt for myself. Should have been accumulating the right kind. Sorry, Darren, you didn't have to hear that. So so my wife and I, like, as soon as my son was born, we were like, we want to get out of here. We don't want to raise a child in Southern California in the current climate. So the two places we looked at were southern Idaho, like Twin Falls area, and South Central Texas. And we wound up going with South Central Texas because there was a lot more people we knew here. We had a good social network in the area. So the decision kind of came upon us pretty fast. We weren't expecting to go. We weren't expecting to leave Southern California. Even once we decided, okay, we need to get out of here, we were thinking, maybe we'll leave maybe middle to end of 2022, something like that. But a series of events transpired and it became immediately evident to us we needed to get out ASAP. Yeah. So January 2022, we headed out here, and so we've been here for almost 2 years now, and it's been a very up and down time out here. There's been a lot of difficult things with the transition here. Been working on several different projects here, trying to get things off the ground and dumping all of our money into those things. And so we haven't really been able to travel, haven't been able to get out and go back and see my family. And within the last calendar year, about the last calendar year, I've had 3 different family members who died. It was kind of like, this probably need to make sure we get back and see him a few more times, or time might be kind of winding up, but then things went south all of a sudden and they died. And that was really rough. It's been rough, like not dealing with the burden of the knowledge that I wasn't able to get my son back in time to meet some of his family members. He just turned 3 and he's only been to my home to see my family. That he's not even going to be able to remember the times that he's gone back to see there. We need to get back there as soon as possible. But so the things that I've really been focusing on and really kind of as I've come out of this obsessing about politics and trying to think political solutions and worrying about the state of things and everything, I could not care less about those things now. What I care about is my family, the stability of my family, the safety of my family, the health of my son, watching him grow up and learn and develop. The last 2 years shortly after we got here, we became catechumens officially. And then we were baptized at Pascha this year. And so it's been I guess the things that I used to care about is just really hard to care about them anymore. Like what I care about is my family. I care about success in business, health and happiness for my family, and growing in the church. And really, you don't need any more than that. Like all this other stuff, the other stuff you're worried about, it'll sort itself out. It doesn't matter how good or bad that turns out if you don't have if you don't have your life in the church, your family and your business situation sorted, then none of the other stuff matters.
Yeah. No, I mean, very well said. That's basically, been my situation as well, and kind of how I see things. Like it's not that I still take a passing interest in these things, but I've noticed in terms of my consumption of, content in these areas, it's definitely taken a nosedive, partially out of necessity and partially out of just, what you said. It's like, okay, so I've already decided that, we can't vote our way out of this, that the regime has to collapse at a certain point. And if we're lucky, a great man of history will come about, and it won't be me. And, so, okay, so how do I situate myself to sort of manage that? And it's all basically stuff you say. It's the real, and this is something that's been brought extremely clear to me sort of in the past few years with sort of my changing life circumstances. Because, I also moved, I think it was like at the start of, no, it wasn't January, it was February of last year. I moved back from South Africa to here. And it was basically because, financial situations forced my hand. And I'm like, like my money's gone and my wife is quitting her job because she's pregnant with our second kid. I need to make a move and need to make a decision, make it fast. And unfortunately, that was less stressful than it otherwise might be, because I had, friends and family who were able to be like, yes, you come back here and then, you can get your bearings, you can get a job and whatever. And then, start paying us rent once you start making money, but don't worry about it. And it's like, oh, okay. So, and you realize that and also living in South Africa really brought this to my attention, was that what really will get you through almost any, I'm not going to say any, but almost any eventuality is obvious one, I would say, faith, but also social networks with personal networks with real social capital, like your connection to other people, bonds of mutual obligation and friendship, which transcend, merely convenience or some sort of financial transaction. It's an older, pre-mercantile, I guess, sort of relationship that you have with your fellow man. And since I've come back, naturally, of course, there's my family. So my wife and my kids, but also sort of my extended family. So I got my brother close by, my parents, I have some grandparents not too far away as well. And I'm building out that, I'm meeting new people at church. I'm like, my wife needs friends. Hey, another, young couple with kids here at church. Oh, wow, we're best friends now. Wow, we want to hang out. Hey, you bring your kids over and let's just powwow and whatnot and eat pizza and drink wine and talk about, how we all became Orthodox or whatever. And it's just great. It's amazing. And also reconnecting bonds with like old friends. And another thing I started doing, which I hadn't done in years, is I'm playing music again, like with some old buddies of mine. And it's just the meat and potatoes of real life, in terms of kind of it's recognizing like the problems of that book, Bowling Alone, and then basically saying, okay, but why does my life have to be like this? And just sort of realizing the problem is, I guess, sort of in our current day and age, is that sort of the mode of being which I'm trying to make reality was just kind of the given for all humanity, basically, and whatever what have you, were just sort of normal. It was normal to not be an atomized individual trying to sort of, you know, create your own, create your own world. Oh, are we still there? Hey, Matt?
Yeah, you locked up for a second there, but I think you're back.
Okay, good. But suffice to say, just to put a bow on my ramble, what I think is it's still possible to sort of, I guess, have that in life, but you just have to be intentional about it. But it is still possible. And although difficult, you can still have that. And then once you have that sort of social network, or you're building that, then pivot to sort of what I want to talk to you about next, business or a career. And it could be a traditional job or something else, whether it's starting a new enterprise, for example. So what's that path been like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I said a little bit ago, this idea that there's kind of this irony in the modern materialist paradigm where all of the people who get really obsessed with a lot of these ideas wind up in this funny space where they spend all of their time focused on theory, discussing and yelling and arguing about theory, and they become completely divorced from the actual real world around them. And you see this in them psychologically, you see it in them physiologically. You have the extremely online physique, and you get people that have like the extremely online eyes, where you can tell that this person just sits and stares at a screen for hours every day, just nonstop. They're not doing anything else. They just kind of got this zombie-like appearance to them. They're not getting outside and touching grass, as they say. And that's one of the beautiful things about orthodoxy, is that you cannot participate in the life of the church without engaging all of your senses. To participate in the life of the church, you have to go be there for the liturgy. At the liturgy, you hear things, you sing things, you smell things, you feel things. All of your senses are engaged in it. It's very, very grounding. It's very real. And I think when you begin doing that, you probably won't really notice it at first, but this has been my experience and other people as well. After you've been attending an Orthodox church for like a year, it just starts kind of affecting the rest of your life in a grounding sort of a way, where you just feel more kind of in touch with reality, directly engaged with reality, which I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And I won't really go into all that right now, but where I've kind of struggled with my relationship to online communities for the past, because I've been a very active part of a lot of different online communities over the past several years, but so much of it bogs down in just constant debate and argumentation about philosophy and theory and
The theory cell problem. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, I enjoy all that stuff. I like that stuff. I want to do that stuff, but I don't like who I am when I'm doing those things all the time. I don't, and I've become very, I don't want to say sensitive. I've become very on my guard toward people who are blackpilling, because I think that there's no greater sin than blackpilling. Blackpilling is just, it's so incredibly toxic, poisonous, destructive. I'll put it this way. I care more, unironically, about the performance of my favorite sports teams than I do about who the Speaker of the House is, or which rich person is getting away with what thing, or what new piece of technology is coming down the pike to enslave us all. I care about what my favorite sports team is doing because it makes me not have to think about all that stuff. And it grounds me in this experience. Sometimes I go see them in person. I go experience it in person. And I've got a group of friends who are all invested in the same thing. And we all get to experience, like once a week or however often, we get to sit and watch this thing happen together and experience the emotional highs and lows of it together. And it's very, I don't know, it's very wholesome.
Yeah.
And I could not give a flying fuck who the Speaker of the House is, what is going on with whatever war or whatnot. Like, I can't do anything about that. It doesn't do my mind any good to sit here and obsess about it and track every single movement and every single new development and parse through all the political speak and try to 5D chess reason through who's doing what and why and what's going to be the next thing and how it's all going to, like, we're not equipped to deal with this sort of thing on a regular basis. And it is, if you're doing that stuff, it's poisoning your mind. I guarantee you it's poisoning your mind.
Yeah. And the thing is it ends up becoming like a similar vice to it's basically like too much video games for the high IQ.
Yeah.
It's basically what it is. Cause it just sort of, you just get wound up and it sort of consumes you. And then eventually, inevitably certain other aspects of your life will take a knock due to that sort of consuming interest. And like you said, you really can't do a whole lot about it, but there is actually a lot you can do, around you, with the people around you, with, whether it's finances, just regular social interactions that sort of enrich your life. One of the shows that I've been listening to a little bit, and they're also they're Catholic, but they're fellow Alaskans and IRL friends of mine at this point. Is show's called Contra Gentiles with Jeremy Cubas and Grant, and that's sort of one of the things they talk about. Is there's a certain zest that they have for life, and I think is sort of tied, despite our differences with with the Catholics, I think both Catholicism and Orthodoxy both have an appreciation for like the good things of life, like friendship, camaraderie, the barbecue, the enjoying a bit of sports ball once in a while, the just basically enjoying God's creation, like, and being and absorbing some of that sort of these things that the Lord is in his beneficence has decided to give us. I think is actually good for your soul, because of course it can become, it can, if you let it can inflame the passions, just like politics can, right? But in a different way. So you can imbibe too much in alcohol or sex or whatever, or any of these things, or just like go off into the woods and like forget your responsibilities. You can so that would be loving nature too much. But fundamentally what that is, that sort of balanced approach to life, is it lets you spit out the black pill. Like, you can recognize the reality of our political situation, but not let it smother you. It's hard to care too much or be too worried about like what, whatever bullshit Joe Biden might or might not, or his handlers might or might not be getting up to, when, you have like a delicious breakfast of sourdough pancakes, reindeer sausage, and then you go up to the mountains and it's crystal clear and the sky is like pink and orange. And then you come home and you go to Vespers, and then you have like, put the kids down to bed, you watch a movie, you have amazing sex, and then you do it again like the next weekend or whatever. Like, life is actually really good, despite all these things. And it's not that we shouldn't care about all these other problems, but focusing on them to the point where it really agitates you, and it cripples you from actually achieving good that you can do in the real world, living for others, right? Like today, it's a lot of the things that I did today were not necessarily for my benefit, right? There are things that my kids wanted to do, my wife wanted to do, but I enjoy doing them because it gives fulfillment and happiness to them, right? So my happiness is not linked so much. It's not that my happiness, it requires other people to be happy, but to a large extent, I think a person's satisfaction should be tied to what they are doing for others, if that makes sense. There is a distinction, but it is important, and it's I think it's real. So
this is where I actually have been kind of rediscovering different subcultures online that I followed closely for a while and kind of got away from, but I'm relearning how much I appreciated them. And that's the I don't know what you call it, like online entrepreneur, sales and marketing, psychology type of people. And one of the biggest reasons, so I got pretty deeply entrenched in this culture when I was working with Jason, because he was doing entrepreneur coaching, and I was very much involved in that life, and I was following a lot of people related to that.
If I may interject, one of my favorite anecdotes from Jason Stapleton was, and this was when he had his original show. There was two things that sort of came from that show for me. One is he was talking about just some anecdote of some guy he knew who just like started a landscaping company, and he ended up like being really successful with it. And he was like, "Oh, what am I going to do for a job? I don't know. I guess I'll start this." And it turned out to be successful. And then I was like, "Huh, interesting." And then the summer came around, I was still working on my master's, and then I'm like, shit, I need money. I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll start a landscaping company and I'll make money at it. And I did. And then the other thing too is there was this anecdote he said a number of times, but he was a contractor in Afghanistan, I think, Kabul, and him and all the other guys are stressed out about like politics or whatever. They're like, "Oh, what do you think about this next election?" And then there's this guy who's just like ignoring the conversation. He's just like shoveling Lucky Charms or whatever into his gob. And then they ask him, I'm going to say his name's Brad. They're like, "All right, Brad, what do you think?" And he's like, "Doesn't matter." He's like, "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" And then his response was basically, "None of this crap matters because I'm a winner and winners win. Like, no matter what happens, I'm going to win." And I was like, that's actually a good mindset to have.
Yes.
You might die, but who cares? Like, you were going to die anyways, and winners actually do win. So try to be a winner. And but anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, if anyone wants to hear like the whole drawn out story, because Jason really dramatizes it when he tells it, just look up Jason Stapleton winners win. It's out there. Yeah. That's I know I've talked to a lot of people who like hearing that story was like a turning point in their life and like the way that they view the world around them. The thing that I love about the people like that, the sales and marketing psychology, the people who are entrepreneurs who are working at growing businesses, is because they have this perspective toward the political system that they're just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it is what it is. Like the tax code is the tax code. And I'm not going to sit here and complain about the taxes being burdensome. I'm just going to figure out how to navigate around them. Just treat the system like a constant and just navigate around it. They're not sitting here obsessing about current events and all that stuff. And it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing to listen to people who are talking about like timeless principles of human psychology and strategies for marketing and how to monetize things. And this is the sort of stuff that I think we have a sacred duty, especially as Christians, we have a sacred duty to be masters of this sort of thing, because this stuff is creative. This is a main like venue for creativity, and we're called to be creative. This is part of being an imager of God, is creating, being a producer, especially as men. Men, you're not a man if you're not creating and producing things. You have to. And your body, your mind will tell you if you're not. If you're not being creative and productive, you're going to feel low energy, brain fog.
Yep.
You're going to start having allergy problems. You're going to have autoimmune issues. Your whole body's going to start rebelling against you if you're not actively engaged in some kind of creative, productive pursuit on a regular basis with progress that you can track. You have like an internal gyroscope, sort of, that it's not a gyroscope, but whatever. You have an internal meter that's tracking your trajectory. Is your trajectory on net, on its way up, or on its way down? And if you're holding serve, if you're just staying steady, it's kind of like everything else is moving up without you. So if you're staying steady, you're actually going down. You have to be constantly getting better every day at something. You have to be improving. You have to be developing, creating, producing, because this generates the psychological feedback loop that's going to ensure that you don't have the testosterone levels of like a menopausal woman. You have to be constantly building and creating and producing. I want to respond to something here that Emmanuel said. He said, "Is there ever a place to any black pill?" The usual argument is to say the ship is sinking and people around me don't even know it. Another way to ask this may be if there is ever a place to fear. And I think so. The black pill specifically is not just fear. It's like doom. It's like people who are doomsaying.
It's despair. Yeah.
Yeah. It's despair. Yeah. Like you can be fearful of, like, of course, like fear is a natural thing, and there's plenty to be fearful about. But my issue is with the people who are constantly, they spend all of their time obsessing about this sort of stuff, and they're not doing anything creative or productive with their time. They're not investing in themselves. They're not improving their own health, improving their own wealth, building their family, generating anything of value. They're just obsessing and perseverating on all of the negative things that are happening around them. Because like I don't even know if it's irony, like the great pathetic thing about it is that by spending all of their time and energy invested in doomering about stuff, they're actually making themselves even more vulnerable to whatever the doom is that they're talking about. Being able to see it coming isn't going to do you any good if you don't take the time before whatever it is gets to you and make yourself someone who can survive that sort of thing.
Yeah,
and if you really care about other people, you have to save yourself.
Here. I'm going to die. I knew it 10 years out, but I didn't do anything to prepare for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's more pathetic than the person who saw it coming and got taken out by it, or the person who didn't see it coming and got taken out by it? Like either way, you wound up getting taken out by it. So why don't you spend your time ensuring that you're not going to be taken out by it? Oh, and it just so happens that if you do that well, then you can actually help other people and prevent them from being taken out by it. And if you help enough people, you'll get paid for it, either literally in terms of actual money or in social capital, in such a way that you actually might become someone who could do something about it. Because there are people for whom it's good for them to get involved in the political system or run for office or start a super PAC or whatever. There's people for whom that's actually a good idea. Yeah. But they're the people with the resources to actually be able to do something about that.
Yes.
Not some guy who spends all of his time just on Twitter all the time. Like raising awareness isn't accomplishing anything. Go make something of yourself and then actually do something productive.
Yes. Raising awareness. What a scam. In a lot of cases, not in all cases, but usually the ones where it isn't a scam is they are actually simultaneously building social capital, building real friendships and whatnot. And I'm happy to say that for a lot of the people that I still, who kind of were living sort of in parallel to me and on my path and became internet buds with or whatever, there has been, I don't think we're the only ones. I think there has been a recognition for a lot of these guys that there has to be a pivot to the real, a pivot away from the online, a pivot towards real stuff, real actions, real friendships, real face-to-face meetups, real organizations that we create, that we control, that we are doing things with, whether it's political or social, just some sort of social club or network, whatever it is, because at the end of the day, all of these things are valuable. So even if it's not a business, even if it's just like I said, it's sort of a fraternal organization, you build levels of trust and familiarity with people. There is a weeding out process, so you can find out who the bad characters, grifters, or black pillows are, and push them to the side. And then all that you're left with are the guys who actually want to manifest something positive in the world. And that's going on through like various organizations. Of course, the timeless one, the one that will outlive all of us, is the church. But there's other things too, like the basket weaving, which Distributist talks about a lot, or the old Glory Club, who I know some the guys who started that. That's the idea with that, is to eventually become kind of a mutual aid society, fraternal organization, and they're putting on conferences and things like that. And again, the benefit of that right now at this point is developing the social capital. Yes, so they are talking about these political stuff and whatnot, but fundamentally that is nectar to attract, the right sort of people who have the values that you have, the correct values that the organization has, and to bring them in so that you can, with that sort of social capital that you develop, manifest something in reality and not just online in a chat room.
Yes. We need more, especially for men, we need more fraternal organizations. And specifically, like this is my dream. My dream is to have, so I've got two different Discord communities that I run right now. One of them is the one for the podcast for Kingpilled, the Kingpilled Discord. And then I have one with Cooper in the chat. He and I have we started the company Third Position Nutrition to start doing nutrition and fitness consulting for guys who are trying to get their shit together. And we have a Discord associated with that as well, called the Hyperborean Lodge. Any member of the fitness community gets access to the Discord.
Hyperborean Lodge, love it.
Yeah, right. And our ultimate goal with this, like our long-term vision, is to get guys started on taking care of their own bodies, start developing some progress on building muscle, losing fat, just getting your shit together in general, and all this stuff where your brain fog, your low energy, your inability to concentrate, your bad sleeping, your gut issues, all these sorts of things. If you begin developing, like building muscle and getting your diet and your energy levels focused, then a lot of these other things are going to solve themselves. And suddenly you're going to find yourself with a whole bunch of energy and time on your hands, because now all of a sudden you're a much more efficient person in general. You're going to have your testosterone levels are going to pick back up. You're going to start feeling aggressive, and you're going to want to put your energy into something. And what we would love to see is imagine getting a group of guys who are all focused on their own personal development and improving themselves, first physically, and first spiritually, but then physically and familially, and then entrepreneurially. And you get a group of guys who are all who make themselves into high net worth individuals through whether it's starting an online business or starting a local business or taking over another business or buying into a partnership or however they go about it. And then being able to have a fraternal organization with a bunch of guys who all have resources, and then being able to take all of those resources and direct them towards specific projects.
The network of tens, a fraternal organization comprised entirely of Charles Haywoods. Yes.
yes, exactly that. Imagine what you could accomplish with something like that. Guys who don't. I guess Charles Haywood is a guy who's got like a public voice, and he has a theory cell inclination as well. Yes. But imagine a bunch of basically just a bunch of assassins
at this point. So.
Right. He's done the work. He's done all the stuff. He's put himself in that position. Yeah. He's the person who can get away with that, and who's actually useful to. It's actually useful to have him doing that. Imagine having a group of guys who are all basically just, socially speaking, they're like a bunch of assassins because they don't have a big online footprint. Nobody really knows who they are, what they believe, or what they think, or whatever. But they've just been accumulating resources to themselves and then cooperating together to direct those resources toward accomplishing things. And accomplishing things could be in the political sphere. It could also be in like starting a city somewhere. If you get enough resources around, you could build your own city and you can move all of your guys all to that city and all live there with your families. And you could create whatever industries you want. Like, this is the type of thing that I think once you kind of get all the theory selling out of your system, at least for me and other guys around me who are in the same mindset, it's like once you kind of get all the theory selling out of your system, you start realizing, okay, now hold on, I've spent my 20s and 30s wasting my time on all of this intellectual stuff. Maybe it's time to actually start doing something with my life and start producing something in the real world. Because I think there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with accumulating resources to yourself if you're doing it honestly and ethically. Because if you're doing it honestly and ethically and you're accumulating a whole bunch of resources, that's a signal that you're providing a ton of value to people.
Correct.
Your focus has to be on providing the value. And if you provide the value, you'll accumulate the resources. And when you accumulate those resources, you can use them to help your family, your friends, your loved ones, your neighbors, everyone around you. And then you can actually do something productive. Again.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's where you can actually do something worthwhile with your time that's actually going to accomplish something more than just raising awareness.
Definitely, 100%. So we've been going on for a little bit over an hour here now. Before we leave, I want you to sort of tell the people about your latest and greatest business ventures. What is Matt Erickson up to, and how did he go about doing it? That might be a whole lot, but the Cliff Notes version per se.
So I've been working in real estate down here for a little while, and I've got a couple other ventures that I'm working on right now. I'm probably going to just leave those for offline for the time being. But the main focus right now is the thing I was just referencing, third position nutrition. So my buddy Cooper and I were we were both coming into the church at the same time, and we were on the phone all the time, every day. I get up in the morning and go for a walk. I walk like 7 to 10 miles a day with my dog. And I would just get up and walk for 3 or something hours in the morning, and he's driving a truck delivering steel. And so he's got plenty of time to talk on the phone. So we're just sitting there talking, and we talked to each other all the way through Lent, and then all the way through the summer. We were just, just kind of sometimes commiserating, sometimes celebrating, just talking all the time. And we were thinking about a lot of the same stuff we've been talking here. Like what's the stuff that matters? What are we doing with our lives? How can we begin to act in the real world in a way that seems to be commensurate with our actual worldview? And he has autism, and his autism is really, really geared toward physical fitness. And he was telling me about some of this crazy stuff related to this guy named Mike Mentzer, who's a well-known bodybuilder. He's got a pretty interesting backstory. We're going to be doing an episode on it here pretty soon. We're also going to be going on the 2-Bit podcast with Jason and Mark, and we'll talk a little bit more about Mentzer. So you can look out for those for more detail about him. But specifically, Mentzer's approach is very unique in that he recommends a relatively low number of reps and only a single set. So instead of the standard model of working out, which is 3 to 5 times even a week, going for 60 to 90 minutes, Mike Mentzer workout can be accomplished if you really know what you're doing, you can do it in less than 15 minutes. And then say again.
So interesting. Tell me more.
Yes. So the idea is, it's called high intensity training. And the idea is that you maximize the amount of time your muscles are under load. And if you're doing true high intensity training, the reason it's going to be done so quickly is because you literally are not going to be capable of doing more. It's going to take your muscles to absolute momentary failure. And that's really what's necessary in order to build muscle. You want to build muscle because, number one, you want to look good. You want to have a good physique. Also because muscle is much more metabolically active than fat, and muscle consumes fat. So you're going to look better. You're going to feel better. You're going to be able to eat more and have more energy from it. All of these things are all the good downstream effects of building more muscle. But if you're going to build muscle, the way I look at it, if I'm going to try to build muscle, I want to do it as efficiently as possible. There's no reason in having a bunch of wasted movement, a bunch of wasted, like my arm is only going to bend so many times in my life, and I don't need to like wear that out sooner. And frankly, for me, I've always had a hard time getting into the gym and lifting weights and all that stuff because I get really bored. Like it just is, it's kind of dull. And it's arbitrary that you're just going to go do like 3 reps of just like, you're just going to sit here. Okay. 8, 9, 10. Okay. You're just going to do these 3 sets and then you're going to go to your next exercise. The whole thing is very arbitrary. It seems very arbitrary, and it's because it is very arbitrary. So what you're trying to do when you go lift weights is you're trying to send a signal to your body that makes your body go, oh, fuck, we need to build muscle because if we don't, we're going to die. That's essentially the goal of lifting weights. So the best way to do that is to be very slow and controlled and intentional. Keep your muscles as much underweight as they possibly can and maximize the intensity of it. And if you do that, you're going to torch yourself quickly, which is a good thing because that means it was efficient. It didn't require tons and tons of reps and tons of extra wear and tear on your body. And then the most important part is you're going to rest. You're going to rest for 4, 5, even more days. Once you really get into it, Mentor even had some clients who were lifting as infrequently as 14 or 15 days apart. So they would lift and then rest for 2 weeks and then lift again. And each time they worked out, it would be somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, depending on how they were going about it. And they were still either building or maintaining muscle at that frequency. Now, everyone's body's different. Some people can do it that infrequently. Some people need to be more frequent. The most important thing is that you're getting adequate rest. So this is all stuff that I've been learning from talking with Cooper, and then he put me onto some videos, and we started talking about this, and we were like, man, this would be, number one, this is so easy. It's so easy, and people make it so difficult, so much more difficult than it has to be. And I see all of these guys in our circles. Like if you see a meetup of guys from the extremely online right-wing dissidents, autists and stuff, like it ain't a great sight sometimes. No. And there's probably plenty of reasons for that, but a big one is that you've got a lot of these guys who are just online all day. Yeah. They're not actually lifting. And a big reason for that, I think, is number one, is either they're afraid of getting hurt or someone has just convinced them that it's going to be way more difficult than it has to be. Like seriously, you only have to, especially if you're just starting out, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes twice a week. And you're going to see improvement from exercise to exercise. You're going to progress very quickly.
It makes sense because it's what you're explaining this to me, and I'm just like, that makes sense. Like I've never heard of it before, but it's just like the way you break like so many other things that I've learned over my life. Whether it's orthodoxy or some of the political realizations I've had. It's like, oh, I never thought about that, but it strikes me that it's true just because like of how you're sort of framing it, what you're saying. And the thing is when I typically do, when I do go to the gym, I try to do it sort of the conventional way. I'm not like super structured, and my goals have always just been, I don't want to get fat and I don't want to be a beanpole. That's basically been it. However, I just sort of do it in a very sort of conventional way. But what you're talking about with sort of the Metzger approach is maximizing efficiency. So it's so all that time that I would be in the gym hour and a half or whatever, if my muscles are just constantly under load for like 15 minutes, it achieves actually better results than
Yeah.
sort of, doing something that's not under maximum load intermittently over the course of an hour.
Right.
So
The way that Cooper explains this is he says, he's in here in the chat, so he's going to fact check me if I get anything wrong.
Actually, Matt,
yeah, he's my actually guy. So if you think about like you're doing bicep curls and you're just doing a normal, you do maybe like 8 or something like that. You do like 3 sets of 8 or something along those lines. If you sit there and you do 1 set, you do 8. So how long is it going to take you to do 8 bicep curls? It's probably going to be somewhere 10 seconds or so to get through 1 set. It might take you a little longer. Maybe you're struggling at the end, 10, maybe 15 seconds to get through 1 set of 8 reps. So that means if you do 3 sets of 8 reps, and let's just to make the math easy, let's just say it takes you 10 seconds to get through each. So you're going to have spent 30 seconds actively lifting for those, 24 reps. You could even say 45 seconds actively lifting if it took you 15 seconds to do them. So your muscles are under tension. And this is assuming you're doing it. You're not resting in between. You're not locking your arms out. You're not resting at the top. Like you're steadily going the whole time. Now, imagine if you take, instead of doing 3 sets of 8 reps at a normal pace, you do 1 set of, say, 8 reps, but you take 10 seconds for each rep. So you're going at a pace of approximately 4 seconds up, 2 seconds at the top, 4 seconds back down. Now you do 8 reps, and it takes you 10 seconds per rep. So it's going to take you 80 seconds to complete the 1 set. So you just spent 80 seconds with your muscles actually under load, actually engaging them, actually fatiguing them. Whereas with the 3 sets of 8 reps, you would do, 45 seconds to do the 3 sets of 8 reps. So you're getting almost twice the time of your muscles under load, doing it the Menser way, slow and intense. But overall, you're done much quicker. So you're done quicker, but you actually did more work. So it's a little counterintuitive, but
it's efficiency is what it is. Yeah.
Yes. And I'll go a little more technical on this. So basically you've got 3 different types of muscle fibers. You've got the slow twitch, you got intermediate twitch, and you got fast twitch muscle fibers. And the slow, intermediate, and fast designation refers to the time it takes to fatigue those fibers. So your slow twitch fibers are going to fatigue slowly and recover quickly. Your fast twitch fibers are going to fatigue fast and recover slowly. The fast twitch fibers are, there's way more of them. They're much denser and much more densely packed. And they're much more innervated. There's more nervous system connections to them. And they're the ones that you can get the most growth out of your fast twitch muscle fibers. There's basically 2 ways that you can fatigue your fast twitch muscle fibers. One of them is by doing explosive things. So basically you need to recruit your fast twitch muscle fibers. You have to engage a fight or flight response to like explode off of something, like jumping or jerking or yanking or those types of things. Those subject your muscles, your body system to peak forces, which are the things that can actually hurt you. That's when you get hurt, is when you try to do explosive things. The other way that you can recruit your fast twitch fibers is by first completely fatiguing your slow twitch fibers, then completely fatiguing your intermediate twitch fibers. So this is the goal with high intensity training, is you want to burn all the way through your slow twitch fibers, then burn all the way through the intermediate twitch fibers, and then you'll get access to your fast twitch fibers, and you can burn through them as well. The slow twitch fibers,
because they'll be the only things that aren't jelly at that point and will respond. Yeah, okay.
Precisely.
Like
so your tempo and timing matters a lot here, because your slow twitch fibers recover really quickly. This is why, like, if you've ever done like some major squats or something, and then you get up and you've kind of got Bambi legs and you can't walk for a little bit, but if you sit and rest for a couple minutes, then you can get up and walk fine. That's because those slow twitch fibers recovered really fast. So slow twitch fibers will recover in like 60 to 90 seconds. Fast twitch fibers, when they're fully fatigued, can take 7 to 10 days to recover. So if you do a proper high intensity workout and you ensure that you completely burn through all of your slow twitch fibers and intermediate twitch fibers and then get to the fast twitch fibers, then if you want to actually recruit those fast twitch fibers again, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to rest for a while and let them recover. But again, those are the ones that are the most, like if you're trying to get swole, if you're really trying to get the big old muscles, the fast twitch fibers are the ones that are going to have the most potential for growth. So yeah, so there's specific techniques that go into how you do it. If you want to maximize, make sure that you're fully recruiting all of the muscle fibers, doing the proper movements, and then making sure that you rest, that you watch out for symptoms of overtraining. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So when we started Third Position Nutrition, we put together the fitness program, which was based on Mike Mentzer's principles. And we've put it together in such a way that it's adaptable to anybody, to basically anybody at any level of expertise. If you're a really experienced weightlifter, then it's probably not like, we're not geared toward you. This is really geared toward people who have little to some experience with weightlifting and are wanting to get into it, wanting to figure out how to strength train, but they don't necessarily have a lot of time, or they're afraid of getting hurt, or they don't really know what they're doing, or they don't have any equipment. We have a protocol that'll work if you don't have a gym accessible to you or any gym equipment. So we started the company to actually help coach people through this. So people who are wanting to get into strength training, they don't know what to eat, they don't know how to eat, they don't know what type of nutrition, they don't know how to do the protocol, all that sort of stuff. We put it all together in along with a coaching aspect to it, so you get a one-on-one personal trainer. And so our goal with this is to help the guys who have the extremely online physiques, who don't really know where to start. And really the people that are kind of the closest to my heart are the ones who are, they maybe have like chronic pain issues, fibromyalgia or rheumatoid arthritis, or they've got chronic gut issues, autoimmune disorders, migraines, brain fog, low energy, low testosterone, all these sorts of things, because these are all things that I spent quite a few years struggling through. I know those struggles very, very well. And all it took was a few relatively small changes to my own personal habits, and I experienced massive benefits from them. So those are the things that I want. Like, there's a lot of people that I talk to that are like, oh, I don't really want to be a bodybuilder. Like, I'm not trying to be, Arnold over here. The thing, like, you don't have to be. But you still, if you're a man, you should be building muscle. Just because there's very few things that you can do.
You're a man. You should be strong. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes. There's very few things that you can do that will generate more health benefits for yourself, especially as a man, than building muscle.
Yes.
And not just for health, but for aesthetics as well.
I was going to go to the other thing. That's the other thing too, which I think a lot of this theory stuff leaves out is, aesthetics are a real thing. Like, the outward is a reflection of the inward, right? So what you like that is the inward. Let me rephrase.
Aesthetics.
And inward aesthetics, yes. What is on the outside reflects the inside. This is why the adage of, in the old days, they actually had books on like physiognomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, this is a distrustful nose. These are dishonest eyes. This is a strong chin. This is an honest face. And I kind of laugh at that a little bit. But then part of it was living in South Africa and then also coming here and just sort of like thinking about the physiognomy stuff. And like, there actually is something to that. Like, you'll encounter people and you look at them and you're like, this guy looks like a winner. Oh, he actually is. This is like a normal of the road, good sort of stable guy. Oh, he is. And this guy is a gangster or a drug addict or some sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, undesirable. Oh, he is, you know, he like the face actually reflects those things in a weird way that, you know, you should, they say, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, but actually, yes, you know,
Yes.
you should judge a book by its cover unless proven otherwise, right? So, and that's sort of where the aesthetics come in. So if you do present, in my own sort of small way, I've sort of had this little shift in my life. So like the way I sort of present myself wasn't really anything I cared about, but then I just tweak it a little bit. All of a sudden I have a lot more positive, shall we say, attention from the opposite sex. I just feel better about myself, more sort of, just, I don't know, just confident and better about life and stuff. And it was just these small little tweaks, which are aesthetic things, right? So the way it shouldn't really matter that much, but they are actually signals of an internal change. So yes, 100% agree. The aesthetics is important.
Well, and what do we do with our temples? We adorn them. We adorn them and beautify them. And I don't know if you've heard, but your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit.
It is true.
So I believe you have a Christian obligation to aesthetically beautify yourself. And that it's not just like, I mean, if you get bogged down in the passion of it, then yeah, vanity is a passion. But that doesn't remove the fact that we adorn our temples, and your body is a temple. So yes, it's very much. I think like a random username here said that health trickles into mental well-being too, and I think I would say more than trickles. I'd say that the two of them are the same thing. Mental health and physical health are the same thing. And if you improve your physical health, your mental health will improve as well. The other part of it, we have the strength training side of it. We also have the nutrition side of the program, where we it's based largely on Ray Peat's ideas about nutrition, which are fairly unorthodox as well. But that's where I've noticed the biggest impact on myself is nutritionally. When I started eating the right way, and I realized that eating the right way doesn't have to be miserable. It's actually can be really, really fun. Just the difference in my sleep quality, my general level of pain. I've had a bunch of chronic pain issues for a long time. They run in the family. Back injuries, lower back, upper back, shoulder injuries, knee injuries, all kinds of stuff. And I spent several years just basically kind of in a nonstop state of constant pain. And it is exhausting to live that way. Because of it, my mental state just deranged. There's just not, it'll make you mad to live in constant pain all the time. So I feel for people who are experiencing this because I've been through it. I've experienced all this.
That's why old timers are grumpy, by the way.
Yes.
Like my grandpa had, he was kind of a cantankerous guy in the first place, but he had, he was a heavy equipment operator for most of his career on on the Arctic North Slope in Prudhoe Bay. And, just years and years and years and years of operating bulldozers and driving trucks in Arctic environments. Yeah, his spine at a certain point just tapped out, and he had to get the surgery and whatever. And yeah, and I could tell it was being in that level of discomfort, and your back is tied to everything else. So if you're moving around and your back screwed up, yeah, I mean, you're going to have a bad time, and that's going to affect your mood naturally because, I mean, yeah, being in constant pain all the time is no way to live. So,
yeah, it's maddening. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the psychological effects of chronic pain and just the way that you begin shrinking away from the outer world. You're literally your whole body starts to go in like this. Your shoulders get hunched over, your arms get pulled in, your neck juts forward, your chin drops, all of this, your whole body starts to cave in on itself because if you're just in pain all the time, your subconscious just sees the outside world as a constant threat, which then this feeds right into the whole like doom pilling thing. So this is one thing that I can tell when someone is constantly doom pilling. I can tell almost, I could almost guarantee that those people, that person probably has some kind of issue with chronic pain. They aren't breathing well. They aren't eating well. They've got low, what do you call it? Like low muscle tone. All of these things, these are all part of the same thing. These aren't separate. Just like we were talking about religion and politics we can talk about them as separate things, but really they're not discrete from one another. They're intertwined with one another. Same thing with physical health and psychological health. If your body is physically in bad shape, then your mind is going to be in bad shape. It can't help but be, because your body and your mind are not separate things. You are your body and your mind together. So if you're in a bad space psychologically, then improving your performance physically is going to make your psychological state better.
Definitely. Yeah. Going back to this comment you pointed out earlier, this goes back to what is termed depression. And there have been, of course, some exceptions to this, but as a general rule, I seldom met anyone in my personal life I knew who was depressed who didn't deserve it. Like, meaning they were living in such a way that I'm like, well, yeah, I would be depressed too. Why are you living like this? Whether it's just, like I had a good friend of mine he was like, like I mentioned, I was homeschooled, right? But so I wasn't exactly plugged in internet culture in high school, but I had a friend of mine who was like one of the early, I guess, generations of those just sort of bedroom dwelling, terminally online, 4chan poster guys. And then he's like depressed all the time and kind of a nihilist. And I just go in his bedroom and it's a mess and I'm laughing. I'm like, haha, you live like this? Haha. But then later I was like, wow, no wonder, my buddy was depressed all the time, because his whole mode of being was depressing. Like, and if he changed that, maybe, who knows, maybe he wouldn't be so depressed. And he actually did, like years down the line. Now he's found, unfortunately, he's still an atheist as far as I know, but he has made some significant changes in his own personal life. He's put aside his philandering ways. He's found a good person, and he's doing things that are both productive and good for other people. Like and he's really come a long ways, and his mindset as a result has largely changed, and it was due in large part to him just not living like someone who deserves to be depressed. So, but anyways, so I guess as we wrap up here, Matt, do you have any other things that we would like to tell the people? Any last pitches? Do you have any additional links that you would like me to put down in the description? And where can they find you? And do you have like anything else?
So Third Position Nutrition, you'll see the information on our program, and you can access there to schedule a call with me if you're interested in the program. We'll talk to you and see if you'd be a good fit. I'll have some questions for you, for your background, hypothetical person who may sign up. Or you can just shoot me a DM on Twitter at @RealKingPilled. Same handle on Instagram. You can DM me there, just so I know that you came from hearing me talk on this stream here. Just when you DM me, just say I'm a winner, and that's how I'll know. And I can hook you up with a special deal since you're coming in from our good buddy Mr. Patriarch. Otherwise, we've got the King Pilled is we're getting started on that again. This next week we're going to be doing continuing our live reading series on Father Seraphim Rose's books. So I got through 1.5 of them a few months ago, and then really got working hard on the business here and got away from it. But we're going to be getting back to it. So look out for that on the King Pilled YouTube channel. And then I think I would just tell you, go to church, start a family, build some muscle, lift heavy things, and spend some time in nature. Don't let your mind be consumed by the whatever dark things are on the internet or around you. Don't let anybody tell you that all is hopeless. There's a great big world out there with a whole bunch of opportunity. There's a lot of people who are finding extreme success, whether with their own physical body, with their business, with their family. There's a lot of people that are out there. It's possible you can do it, and you can do it. So don't let the doom pillars, the doomer pillars, don't let them get you down. Don't listen to them. There's a great big world out there with lots of good things, and just go find them and you'll feel better.
Amen to that. Thank you very much for coming on, Matt. This has been a great talk, and I can't think of a better inaugural episode for my Our Guys Are Winning series, unofficial series, not series that I'm doing. So we have, I think, a couple of other people who I've or who are on my radar, who I would like to invite in the future. I'll leave those quiet for now because I'm not sure about timing or anything about that. But we will be having other friends of the show on to discuss sort of how they're making a difference, how they are changing their lives for the better, whether it's working in a job that they're just crushing at and, they're fine being employed, which is perfectly fine, by the way. There's a lot of guys like that, or whether it's in business. And I want to talk to both of those people. So if you have any interest in coming on, discussing that, if you're doing your own thing, that's really cool. I'd love to hear about it. Just shoot me a message on Twitter or leave a comment on this video. As far as, let me think. As far as new stuff coming up, I have next weekend a stream on what is an American, which I'll be seeking to answer. I'll be pontificating on. And also I have been invited of all people, by Ethan Ralph from Killstream. Apparently he wants me to be on one-on-one for an interview. So I was like, do you want me to be like on a blood sports thing? I've actually not watched any Ralph Retort stuff myself, but it could be an interesting conversation. We'll see where it goes. Maybe he wants to give his life to the Lord or talk about marriage or something. I don't know. So I'll be letting you guys know when that happens. But that's it for me. Thank you very much, guys. God bless. And 2-Bit Podcast. Yes, big fan of the show. Really like your stuff, and I would be happy to be on Friend or Fed someday. Also, we have a super chat from a super Chad here. Random username, $2. Welcome back. Thank you, sir. Happy to be back. It's been fun, and I will talk to you guys later. Patriarch out.